Hello, Liquid New Hampshire. I am here with Justin of the Green Party. So Justin, first of all, I just want to get a vibe of what is the Green Party and what are the general values that they stand for.
Excellent. Well, glad to be on your show today, Dominic. And thanks so much. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing it right.
It is.
Okay,
it is
good, Dominic.
Yes.
Okay. Justin, Beth, I'm actually coming over here to visit today from Maine. Live in Portland, Maine, and before I kind of get into, oops, sorry about that. Before I get into like the Green Party, what it's about, the values. Talk a little bit about my kind of experience coming into the party. I think might be helpful.
Absolutely.
Just as a baseline for people. So back in 2015, I started to get really interested in politics because of Bernie Sanders, and I joined to help his campaign, collecting signatures both in New Hampshire and Maine. So I come across the border to Portsmouth, went up to like Dover and Durham, collecting signatures for Bernie Sanders. I remember right before the primary, in a blizzard, canvassing through Portsmouth, and it was crazy. But hey, we turned out a huge amount of votes for Bernie, and I think we won like 67%.
Right.
In the primary, and I eventually, we also won Maine. I was a national level delegate for Bernie Sanders, and I went to the convention, the national convention for nominating convention in Philly, and they coordinated Hillary, and they stole the primary from Bernie, the nomination from Bernie, through the super delegates, through so much like coercion, and it was just, I saw some nasty stuff there.
Right.
So I left the Democratic Party immediately after that convention. Like during the convention, I was holding a Jill Steins sign, and I joined the Green Party. We have a strong Green Party in Maine, and it was an easy fit because I found that all the values that I appreciated in Bernie Sanders, and the reason why I jumped on board so strongly for Bernie, was there in the Green Party. So it wasn't just one single candidate, it was all the candidates that we run with the Green Party.
Right.
So
that's good.
Yeah, now as far as values, we talked briefly a little bit before the interview here. So we have four values that make up what we call our four pillars in the Green Party. And that would be social justice, grassroots democracy, ecological wisdom, and nonviolence. So those four values are core to the Green Party's values. There's a slogan that Jill Stein often uses. I've got a Jill Stein for President sign here. People, planet, and peace over profit. So those four pillars feed into that. Now, the four pillars, again, social justice, grassroots democracy, ecological wisdom, and nonviolence, also shapes what are called our 10 principles, which are like those four, but some extended stuff, which I have on the back of my, in very tiny print on the back of my little business card that I made up as I go around and talk to people. So grassroots democracy, social justice, ecological wisdom, nonviolence. Number 5 is decentralization. Basically stop the concentration of power in the hands of the few. Community-based economics and economic justice, feminism and gender equality, respect for diversity, personal and global responsibility, and future focus. So now those 10 principles are what forms the Green Party's platform, which is huge. It's a big platform, and there's so many good things in it. We're talking about, we want to end homelessness. We want free education for all. And the, Jill Stein's running on a pre-K through college platform, in our platform. And so all that is in the platform based on these 4 pillars, 10 principles. I actually have you know, kind of again talking a little bit before the interview.
Ah.
We have these shirts were made up by the Green Party of Ohio, and we have.
It's not green.
It's not green. It's purple. It doesn't. I don't know if it looks purple to you folks out there, but this is purple. It's grassroots democracy, and
Oh, they have a little symbol for
this.
each of the four values.
Yep.
Got it. Yeah.
Saying here is grassroots democracy. All human beings must be allowed a say in the decisions that affect their lives. No one should be subject to the will of another. Sorry, yeah. We work to improve public participation in every aspect of government and seek to ensure that our public representatives uh, are fully accountable to the people who elect them. We also work to create new types of political organizations that expand the process of participatory democracy by directly including citizens in the decision-making process. So,
Yeah, what does that
grassroots
mean
democracy.
in practice?
So,
Or policies for the Green Party.
great question. So, ranked choice voting.
Okay.
You know, the Green Party platform has a desire to abolish the electoral college and have a ranked choice voting vote. Trying to think of that. It's ranked choice voting popular vote for president. I personally am not crazy about abolishing the electoral college, and I think there's we'll talk about that
Absolutely, yeah.
maybe a little bit
I'd love
too.
to have that conversation.
But yeah, so even though it's in the party platform to abolish the electoral college, we all have different thoughts. So we come from different places.
Right.
I am not as much against nuclear power as others are, say, in the Green Party.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. If you take it like any other political party, or Republicans or Democrats, you're going to find all kinds of people. We need to get beyond just like, so the Green Party does represent my values. Even though we don't always agree on everything to the point,
Right.
it's like so. But it is my political home, despite whatever subtle differences I have. I mean, I'd say I agree with 98 to 99% of the platform, and I'll bet a strong majority of most Americans also gravitate to like at least 95%, if not up to 98, 99% of the Green Party platform.
Okay. Yeah.
So, yeah, and I was gonna say, we showed the grassroots democracy shirt. I also have the one for social justice, wearing that. That's orange. I think the anti-war shirt, the peace side of the four pillars, is a green shirt. But again, these are made by the Green Party of Ohio. I got these at one of the conventions I went to for the Green Party back, I think, in 2018. And yeah, so
I did also notice the platform when you were describing the 10 pillars. They had a couple of things of interest to me from decentralism, right? It said decentralization, and also it said community-based economics.
yeah,
So how strong of those values in the Green Party in terms of policy?
Community-based economics, I think is important. I'm glad you kind of brought that out as a one of the points that you like about the Green Party, and decentralization. So we're not a party that is for more government. We believe in decentralization. So we believe of more local control of government, and we also want it to be a more participatory government.
Right.
So making it easier for people to be involved in decision making through ballot initiatives and things like that. In fact, I talk often with a person that's very involved with ballot initiatives, a guy named Roger Meadows, who is close with Savvy Sabs,
Okay.
Sabrina Salvati, and her program on Revolutionary Blackout Network. Um, so try to have those conversations because um, we do believe in participatory and more direct democracy. Now, in terms of decentralization and community-based economics, you know, we believe in public banking, which is a really big thing.
I actually I ran for state rep, and one of my issues I wanted to talk about was public banking when I ran for state rep.
Well, we would love to maybe talk about you running again for state rep, maybe with the Green Party here, if we could get
Oh
that
yeah.
started up, and run on that particular issue. Run a ballot initiative as well.
That
on
would be
So,
great because when I ran with the Democratic Party, they really did not like my platform.
so I'll bet your platform would agree very strongly with the Green Party. And, you know, we don't have a Green Party of New Hampshire yet.
Okay.
We'll talk about that and, you know, how we could make that and, you know, what we would make that. You know, what kind of platform would you like the Green Party of New Hampshire to have that's in line with the Green Party platform?
Right.
And we can talk about that process too, because I've been involved at the national level with the Greens, and I know what it takes to kind of start state parties and things like
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
So, and maybe that's some of this conversation is more that we can have offline too, but very exciting. We believe in public banking, community-based economics. It is so, you know, I'm very thoughtful of where I spend my money.
Yeah.
I don't like to spend it in like big mega grocery stores, but sometimes you have to, right? You go
Right.
grocery shopping, but you know, and you know, if I were to run for office, one of the in like say for Congress for federal level office, I would be towards cutting government subsidies across the board. Now you talk about like government spending and like these subsidies, like for a second I'd like to pause here because there's a thing about government spending. What does that mean? I don't know if you've ever heard of modern monetary theory,
Yes.
MMT.
Yes.
There's
I'm
some
quite
big fans of
familiar.
that, and
That's a difficult concept to approach.
it
But
is.
I'm
But
quite
let's
familiar.
talk about it for a second because
Absolutely.
a lot of people MMT are they're very critical of the Greens, saying we don't know enough about it. But I think there are some of us that do, and we kind of I think about it in terms of approaching things. So yeah, government spending. We're spending money on these subsidies, on these foreign wars, and it's like it's out of control. It's not spending things the right way. With those subsidies, like say for big pharma, or sorry, for big ag,
Yeah,
big
sure.
agriculture.
Yeah,
It's like giving them a handout to these big farms, and they're allowed to drive prices down and still make a good profit because they're getting all this money injected from the government. Now, again, this is not necessarily your tax dollars, but it is government subsidies. They're like spending priorities by the government. Now, I would say slash all of those subsidies. Whether or not that improves your tax rate or something like that in the long run, because less money going to those things.
Right.
But in an MMT, it's kind of complicated there.
Yes.
But
Because MMT, to clarify, makes a separation between the taxes being used for spending and the government having sovereign money control and using that for spending.
Yes, thank you. Great way to explain it. And you're probably very much more knowledgeable than I. But I know enough. So, anyways, slash those subsidies. Now, those big farms, right, that were once government supported, have to, if they want to keep their same profits, right, and I'm sure there are people that are making huge bank there, they would have to either drive up their prices, and now their apple costs the same amount as a locally produced farmer's market apple.
Yes, it does.
And now you got a choice between helping out your neighbor or helping out this person wherever. And you're going to help out your neighbor. So I believe in slashing those subsidies. And that, I think, is kind of along the idea of like community-based economics.
Okay.
Make like trying to prioritize spending locally for your friends and neighbors, your family, keeping that and we're not talking about just like a money-based economy too. Okay, here's a thought, and I think this is to some extent in the Green Party platform, but talking about like kind of like mutual aid, but also like skills sharing. like a skills market where, and or like some idea of the commons, where it's like you're sharing your skills to help another that they don't have those skills, and there's a trade there in skills, and you know, so
That is one issue that the Green Party, I think, definitely has over the Democratic Party that I saw on their platform is an embrace of the concept of the commons. And that's a concept I talk about a lot, where for one thing, it typically operates through trusts, right?
hmm
Community land trusts, conservation trusts for various forests, or even in the modern age, data trusts. And then the other version of the commons is what you just talked about, skill sharing. Wikipedia could also be called a sort of a modern commons.
interesting,
And
yeah,
maker spaces is
yeah,
another great area where we could expand that sector. And the beautiful thing for me, when I first got into politics, I started looking around at the left and the right, and I was hearing on the left a lot of bad things about big corporations and the free market, and I was hearing from the right a lot of bad things about big government. And I feel like there's a central problem here with both of
exactly,
these.
exactly.
And commons are neither. It's literally what comes up if you Google neither state nor market. Commons is what comes up. So.
Yeah, and so it's interesting. Another way I'll sum up the Green Party, and so great. All these are great questions and segues and good conversation. I think the another way I'll describe the Green Party to people, and that kind of like how it resonates with me and how I identify myself. You know, I'm an eco-socialist.
Mm.
So that is a term that's used often by many in the Green Party, that we believe in socialism,
Mhm.
and protection of the environment, eco-socialism, um, and like natural resources. Right, we are exploiting natural resources at the expense of other people.
Mm.
In so many ways. I mean, granted, we need some of these resources to provide the technology that we've become really dependent on,
Right.
and maybe that's something we need to look at in the future. What do we need to survive and thrive? But um, you know the so and we'll talk, hopefully we can talk a little bit more about socialism and what the Green Party's ideas of socialism are.
Yes.
But the also, so I'm eco-socialist and I'm also left libertarian.
Mm.
So I believe in personal autonomy. I believe in a lot of libertarian ideas.
Mhm.
Um, you know, except the Libertarian Party's economic kind of ideas of a free market being the solution.
Right. Right.
I definitely don't agree with free market solutions that just basically keep in place these kind of oligarchic systems.
Mm.
Where it's like, oh, a libertarian ideal would be like, oh, this person worked hard for all their money, Elon Musk or
Mhm.
something. But
And that
there's a lot of fallacies there.
I should note that should be that is like common to the history of the left as well. A lot of people's impression, like people will try to come up with simplifications
hmm
of what the right and the left are. Sometimes they'll be like the right is less government, the left is more government, and they'll be like that's like the kind of the energy they'll give. One quote from a scholar, a conservative scholar, Yuval Levine, that I like is he says that the left are truly the ones who advocate the strongest individual freedom. And well, notice this is a man coming from the right saying this.
Yeah,
He says they advocate the true depth of individual freedom, and they're happy to tolerate some economic collectivism if it creates that.
yeah,
I think that's
I
a
think that's
good
fair.
explanation.
And yeah, so again, the this idea of left libertarianism and eco-socialism. We talked briefly about Murray Bookchin.
Yes, we talked
Who
about Murray Bookchin prior to the filming here, and I'm a big fan of his writing.
So, again, I think that the Green Party does a good job of bringing those two together.
Mm.
Again, eco-socialism, left libertarianism, and I think that's where, like, if I think most Americans are benefited from that kind of political policy based on those ideas.
Right, right.
You know, personal freedoms, respecting personal freedoms, personal choice, bodily autonomy, free speech, democracy, but also like eco-socialism, that helps us get to a place where everybody has their basic human rights met. We're talking universal basic income. We're talking, you know, housing for all. We're talking education for all, right? And hey, MMT, if the government, if their spending isn't really based on your tax dollars, and again, they come up with all sorts of money for wars.
COVID is a great example.
And yeah,
it clearly wasn't, because that was an insane amount of money all at once.
Yeah.
And
so we could easily take care of those things: housing, healthcare for all, education for all. And Jill ran on that back in 2016, kind of famously, Jill Stein, and was criticized pretty heavily by John Oliver. And
yeah, she ran on modern monetary theory before Bernie Sanders and the other progressives on the left started talking about it, I believe.
Yeah. So I think, and again, like going back to the idea of like, what does socialism mean to you, to people? You know, I think that's an interesting question. You know, socialism, right? I kind of tend to think of it. I think the Green Party does as well, because that is in our platform, how we achieve socialism. I mean, we support unions and workers' rights. That's fundamental in our platform, but also taking that a step further is we believe in workplace democracy, which is, I think, the evolution that we need to approach towards socialism is workplace democracy, meaning that, you know, the workers own the businesses that they work in, to the point where they are making decisions. It's not this board that oversees them and it profits off of their work. It's the workers all profit, usually equally in a worker co-op, and so we are very much into supporting worker co-ops. And how the Green Party would do that is through public banking, right? To help prioritize loans and spending on these worker
really
startups.
So I've talked to some people on the left who are even farther to the left, who are very critical of any electoral politics and of worker co-ops as a strategy, right? And when I talk to them, their understanding of it, I think, is a little bit shallow. For one thing, they tend to seem to believe that people who advocate worker co-ops advocate individual business owners just happening to start up a worker co-op in the current way of doing things, and that's not really true. There are laws that hold back people from starting up workers' cooperatives, and like you said, the other part of the worker co-op movement is changing our financial system through things like public banks to support them.
Yeah.
So it's a broader institutional, depthful change. It's also, I think, distinct from social democracy. I think that people who say this is just social democracy, I'm like, well, no. Social democracy, I would say, progressive taxation, high levels of social spending.
Yeah.
Democratic socialism, slightly different, because it has that institutional change where we change the core of our financial system and every business in the economy.
And bringing up democratic socialism for a second.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Democratic Socialists of America.
Yeah, sure.
DSA. You know, when I left the Green Party in 2016, it was right after the convention there, and I didn't actually register as a Green in Maine until 2017, but 2016 I was essentially a Green, leaving the Democratic Party behind. But if, in my opinion, if all the people that had supported Bernie Sanders in 2016 had left the Democratic Party at that time, like I did, and again, that was like half of the Democratic Party. Okay, if you think about the percentages of, you know, registered voters and what parties they're with, right? We have about 25% are Republicans, 25% are Democrats, and we got about 50% that are independents.
Yes.
You know, 46 to 47, something. It's like that. Now, if half the Democratic,
it just passed to 51%.
Yeah. So if half the Democratic Party had left, you'd be talking 12.5% there for the Democrats, and like the Green Party, if they were allowed to be on the debate stage, or have like right now, I don't know if you knew this, but Jill Stein is being denied like federal matching funds
Yeah.
that she qualifies for.
Okay. Tell me about that. I don't know a lot about
we'll
that.
talk about that in a second, and just finish that thought. So if the Green Party were allowed to get their voice out and actually be truly heard, I think like at least a third
Yeah.
of the independents would come over to the Green Party.
I mean,
And then 12 and a half from the Democrats.
yeah.
You're talking about a significant slice of the pie that could beat both Democrats and Republicans.
Yeah.
And the Democratic Party really is not as strong as I think
not.
a lot of people are like, oh, the Republican Party is going to fall apart. I think it's the Democratic Party that's going to fall apart first.
Yeah.
And we could talk a little bit about that, why I would...
I think they
Let's see.
overstate their hands sometimes too.
Yeah.
I talked to, I've talked to some Unity Party people, and one thing that the Unity Party people who are more in the center tend to point out is that the Democrats' platform is not always as in line with the majority as they say.
Mhm.
One thing they say that the significant majority of Americans are pro-choice. The significant majority of Americans are kind of, they're kind of confused about pro-choice. You look at the actual studies, or
Mhm.
the polls, I should say, the actual polling, and it says they're pro-choice with asterisks about third trimester. They're pro-choice with
Mhm.
asterisks about, well, what if she will be perfectly healthy? They have all these different asterisks if you ask the question different
Yeah.
ways, which to me makes sense, because if you talk to regular, ordinary Americans when you go out canvassing, they are mixed feelings.
And these are very nuanced kind of subjects. Is there one right solution for abortion and or choice? Women's choice, reproductive choices. Again, as like a left libertarian that believes in personal autonomy and bodily autonomy, I default towards that.
Right.
It's the woman's body, the woman's choice needs to be recognized and respected. And there's another aspect too to say, hey, really, it's a choice between a woman and that's carrying that child and the doctor, and their doctor. So it's, so I think again some of these kind of topics are nuanced, and
the important thing
Yeah.
too about what I'm saying is that the Democrats might not have as stable
Oh, yeah.
of a majoritarian
That's
base
very true.
as they
Yeah.
believe, and that will open the door
Yeah.
for independent parties and third parties like the Greens.
So now you asked, because I threw that in there. So basically, federal matching funds. There's a couple different things. There's the 5% that we talk about. If she gets if we get 5% in the election nationwide, we're open up to some additional funds
Is
for the
that
Green
like
Party.
a public fund for campaigns?
So I don't know exactly like that 5%, like where that money kind of comes in from, and a part of it too is that it stabilizes our party for ballot access in many states.
Okay.
We won't have to fight as hard for ballot access then in that upcoming election, and that's the conversation about ballot access and everything like that. It's there's so many different parts to that, but so I can't remember all the exact rules. I'm only tangentially involved with Jill's campaign in this race, but so what it is like I think she had to get so many contributions of I think over $50 in so many states.
Okay.
So contributions over $50 or greater in so many states, and in each state it had to be like 25 or I think $2,500.
Interesting.
Okay, so like 20 states you had to get $2,500
Right.
and from contributions at least $50 greater or something like that.
Yeah. To show there's a passion.
Yeah, and what that does is once you qualify for that, and she met those requirements back in June, I think.
Okay.
That opened her up to this public money that is available for candidates that meet that. If they request it, they apply for it. So she did, and the FEC said, yes, you qualify for it.
Okay.
And then the Treasury said, yes, you qualify for it, but we're not giving it to you.
Oh.
The Treasury Department.
That's interesting. Acting independently of the other department.
So first of all, that money,
Mhm.
which Jill Stein qualifies for, like, because then it's like it matches like donations after that. So it's like she really has about $300,000 that's owed to her.
Okay.
That would have helped out with ballot access in many states.
Yeah.
Okay, because it costs money to get on the ballot with these petition drives. We can talk more about that. But that, on when you file taxes, federal taxes, there's a
Mhm.
block that says, I want to donate $3 to presidential elections.
Yes.
That is that fund.
Oh, that's that actually explains a lot.
It does.
I was
Now-
wondering what that was.
Now, get this. So that pool of money
Mhm.
is sitting there, and are you familiar with Jason Call at all?
I'm not. Who was that?
So Jason Call is he was running to be a candidate in the election for Washington Congressional District 2, but he's also Jill Steins' campaign manager,
Okay.
and he does a really great job with that. But he posted on X or Twitter about this, and so that pool of money, and that has like $300 million or something like that. This presidential elector campaign fund,
Mhm.
right? That again, it's supposed to help out candidates that refuse corporate money,
Right. Right.
and are doing things in a grassroots way to run for president. That pool of money is supposed to help them out. And again, matching contributions, she's owed like $300,000. But the Treasury Department raided that
Mhm.
and gave that money to the Secret Service.
Holy shit. Oh wow.
Yeah. So
That's insane.
that's insane.
Yeah.
And if not to the Secret Service, they would have given it. They would have said, oh, well, we have all this
Not
spending for
another
Ukraine
budgetary use
or
for it.
for Israel.
Yeah.
So absolute bullshit.
Yeah. That's probably, if there was anyone willing to enforce a law, that would probably be illegal.
Yeah. So yeah, there's it is so indicative of how much of a threat that the Green Party is that they pull this kind of stuff all the time.
Yeah.
The Democratic Party is not about democracy.
And I'm sure that was a Democratic.
It's like,
this is Joe
yeah,
Biden's administration.
absolutely.
It was
Janet
a
Yellen,
Democratic appointee, must have been.
Yeah, Janet Yellen. There's actually some great memes of Janet Yellen and Jill Stein. Like, Jill Stein is like dressed up as Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Janet Yellen is dressed up as like the Emperor. It's it's kind of hilarious.
Okay.
I'll share some memes with you.
Me-
Kind of hard to share with you
memes
guys.
are the political literature of the 21st century. Anyway.
Yeah, so we've covered a lot of things so far.
Yeah, you
what
wanted
are some
to
other
tell
questions?
Me, so you wanted to tell me,
Well,
I believe, about I think
ballot
about-
access?
Well, yes,
Let's talk
about ballot
access.
access. Yeah.
Okay, so ballot access is really hard, and every state is different. And hard, but in some ways, the Green Party's I don't think we mentioned this earlier, but it's the fourth largest party in the United States, behind the Libertarian Party, which is behind the Democrats and the Republicans. Right
Yes.
now, being the fourth largest political party in the U.S., we do have some states where we are stronger than others.
Mm-hmm.
So, in California, in Maine, in Texas, I'm trying to think some other states off the top of my head that
Are
are.
those all strong states for the Green Party, or?
Yeah, and even
It's
so,
kind of a
Texas
funny
is kind of surprising.
variety. California, Texas, and
Maine.
Maine. 3 completely different states.
Yeah, like really on opposite ends of the country too, and stuff. But so the Green Party in Maine, for instance, we have 40,000 registered Greens, over 40,000
Wow.
registered Greens, and I mean this gets into the whole conversation of like, what does it mean to be in the party? It means different things in different states. In Maine, we register with a party. we can participate in closed primaries in Maine.
Mm.
So if you want to vote in the Democratic Party primary, you got to register as a Democrat.
Mm.
So sometimes we'll find Greens that will like, oh, I really want to vote for Bernie,
Mm.
so I got to go Green, or I got to go Democrat. And sometimes they'll re-register as Greens, sometimes not.
Right.
So, um, but every state has different rules on what it means to be a Green Party member, and so there's no consistent thing about what it means to be a Green
Mm-hmm.
in some ways. But the same thing is true with Democrats and Republicans. In New
Right.
Hampshire, right? It's like you're not. I think you can you be registered as a Democrat or Republican? In New
Yes.
Hampshire?
So in New Hampshire, you have to pretty much constantly switch because most people in New Hampshire are independents, and a lot of people will vote one way or the other. So you have to switch to being a Democrat, and then you have to switch back to being an independent, so that the next election you can switch to being a Republican. if
But you have
want
open
to.
primaries though too.
I believe so. I believe
So
so.
that becomes less important too,
Yes.
right? With open primaries. So if we actually had a Green Party in New Hampshire here, why not be registered as a Green Party member?
Right.
Open primaries. You could still vote in the Democratic Party primary or the Republican Party primary. You don't.
Mm-hmm.
So open primary states, why not be registered as a Green?
Right.
That just takes energy away from a corrupt Democratic Party. Why do we keep rewarding them with being registered for them and donations to them when they're not really representing the will of the people? Maybe they'll get the point that they need to change to be more like the Green Party, and that is one thing that we do. By running candidates, we put out platforms that the Democratic Party will actually end up trying to steal,
Yeah.
like the Green New Deal, right? It's
Yeah.
like that was not invented by the Democrats.
Oh. Makes sense to me.
Yeah, Jill ran on it in 2012 and 2016, and Howie Hawkins I think ran on it in 2010 in one of his governor races.
Oh.
So but yeah, so ballot access in Maine we have it already. So Jill Stein is essentially on the ballot in Maine
Right. Right.
for president. It's different for different offices though.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk about that. We got the two signs for Lisa Savage there and Jill Stein for president 2024. Lisa ran for Senate in 2020.
Is she, out of curiosity, Jill Stein, is she on the ballot in New Hampshire yet?
We'll get to that. We'll
Okay.
talk.
Okay.
That deadline is coming up.
Mm.
So we essentially have ballot access here in Maine.
Mm-hmm.
California, we have it automatically because of the number of Greens there
Got
as
it.
well. And some states, it's like how many votes does a Green Party candidate get? Like so, statewide candidates for governor or for U.S. Senate, or sometimes even Secretary of State, or these other kind of statewide offices.
Okay.
In Texas, we have a candidate, Eddie Espinoza,
Mm-hmm.
who is running for Railroad Commission. It's a statewide office. So the votes that he gets for that statewide office for Railroad Commission, which he would do a great job in.
Okay.
There's a lot of things we need to do with our infrastructure and rail being one of them. But the votes that he gets will help maintain that party in Texas, so we don't have to fight for ballot access again. So
Okay.
you don't have to spend a huge amount of money petitioning in Texas or California or in Maine.
Because you've already got it.
Got it locked up.
solidly locked down. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I would say between 15 to 20 states we have kind of locked down ballot access, and then there's other states where we have to fight for it every time.
Right. Which,
And some are easier than others.
as someone who isn't super active with third parties, but talks to third party people all the time, I'm like, oh god, that must be exhausting.
It is completely
clipboard
exhausting.
in order to get on the ballot
Completely
every
exhausting.
single time.
I've helped out in this election cycle in Arizona. I flew out to Arizona last year
Wow.
because they had an early requirement for petitions. Back on Labor Day, I flew out there. I spent 2 weeks kind of petitioning and exploring the state. It was really cool. And we got the signatures needed to get the Green Party on the ballot there. That's a
Okay.
kind of interesting story, though. Maybe we can talk about it more at some point.
Yeah.
I helped out in New York collecting signatures for like a weekend, or a week actually. I was down there. And then most recently in Connecticut. And we're looking good for Connecticut. We're getting basically Jill Stein and a candidate for United States Senate
Okay.
down there in Connecticut based on that ballot petitioning. And that's another interesting point, right?
Mhm.
I'd like to kind of just bring up here it's not just about the presidential race for the Green Party.
Yes.
We want to run candidates for Congress, for federal Congress, right? So Lisa Savage, Justin Paglino down there. We got because of the ballot access work we did in Arizona this time, we got a likely hasn't been fully determined yet. U.S. Senate candidate Eduardo Quintana.
Okay.
And in New Jersey, it's unreal right now.
Yeah.
New Jersey has 12 congressional districts, and the congressional districts are up every year, every election cycle, right? Every 2 years, or
Yeah, I thought
so
it was
even
every
number of
2
years.
years, right?
Yeah, every 2 years, even number of years, basically. You have your U.S. House races, and then Senate is, most states have 2 senators, and then you have, governor's race, so they kind of split up like 6 years often. And so in New Jersey, we've got 12 candidates, 1 for each congressional district.
Yeah.
And we have a U.S. Senate candidate, Christina Khalil,
Oh.
and we have Jill Stein on the ballot there.
That's
so
impressive.
So now, when somebody goes to vote in New Jersey, they're going to be able to vote for a House candidate, U.S. House candidate. Maybe we might even have some down ticket candidates, I hope, in some of those areas.
Right.
I know one person, well, I think they're running another cycle for a state Senate race. But every voter in New Jersey is going to be able to vote for U.S. House, U.S. Senate, and President as a Green.
Yeah.
That's
great. Well, because that's what people like to do. I think ease of mind. A lot of people just down ballot D, down ballot R. So if you can get that to a point where you can down ballot G. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and it's another big point of that is like these Green Party candidates are going to be the only person in the race talking about ending genocide.
Yeah.
Ending wars.
This is
that
I just went out to I actually went out to a demonstration up in Portsmouth where they had a big group of people that were demonstrating for Israel and a big group of people that were demonstrating for Palestine. And I tried to talk to all of them and just get like word out about this podcast, right? I was doing kind of getting the word out.
Yeah.
And I mentioned, I was like, well, that there's not a single party or candidate right now, because I was talking to them about liquid democracy, about ranked choice voting. I'm like, well, there is no candidate out there right now who is pro-Palestine. So half the people at this demonstration have no way of representing themselves electorally.
Jill Stein.
Oh yeah, I mean, I mentioned the Democratic or Republican parties.
Yeah, and that's, we really need to get beyond thinking that it's a two-party system. We got 4 nationally competitive parties. Right? And Jill Stein is already on enough ballots to win the Electoral College. Basically, a majority of the Electoral College votes with this 270.
Is this
she
why
could
you're
win.
maybe not in favor of abolishing the Electoral College? Is this part of that unique stance?
It is part of it, but it's not. I think that the Electoral College, in some ways, is not a bad thing. And man, there's so many things to talk about still.
Yeah, tell me about the Electoral College.
Okay, so here we go. Electoral College. There's 2 states that are doing the Electoral College right. One is Maine.
Okay.
And one is Nebraska.
Okay.
Now, and it's interesting because Maine, we have ranked choice voting, right? Say, rank Lisa first, right? That's what it wasn't just vote for Lisa Savage; it was rank Lisa first.
Because we now have ranked choice voting functioning in Maine.
In some races, right? It works for this race, but not for others. I think your guest that you had on did a pretty good job explaining, Maine ranked choice voting, and we should have it everywhere. We really should. But for the Electoral College, it's interesting. And before I talk about Maine and Nebraska, let's talk about parliamentary systems. Okay, so people uphold like a parliamentary system as a good thing, right? Because you have proportional representation, and they do. They have more than 2 political parties, right? So you have like these other parties. You have Greens representatives, Labor, etc.
A lot of countries do have some resemblance, a party at least called a Green Party.
Yes, yeah, that's absolutely true. In fact, the prime minister in Iceland is essentially green.
Oh,
So that's pretty cool. She's the highest ranking green in the world, Katrin Jakobsdottir. So, anyways, but parliamentary systems, right? They elect their representatives to parliament, and they're called. It's like the House of Commons, right?
you know what? I might want to clarify just a little bit for my audience because I haven't talked about this yet before. In a parliamentary system, like they have in a lot of other countries, they have what's called proportional representation.
Yeah.
Right? And what proportional representation means is instead of a winner takes all, where whoever gets 51% of the vote, for example, wins, they choose members of the largest parties based on the percentage of the vote. So if Greens got 15% of the vote, for example, there would be 15 Greens in their parliament.
Well,
Is that not
to
perfect?
some extent? To some extent, but like a lot of these elections, though, it's won by plurality, just like it is here.
Okay.
So plurality voting is that first past the post voting, right? That's what people talk about, and they say, well, first past the post voting, plurality voting, just getting more than the other candidates in the race. So you could have, if you have four candidates in a very close race, you could have somebody winning by 26%. And
Yes.
we've actually had some close races in Maine where it was the independent that got like 36%, the Republican got 38%, and the Democrat got 18%.
Ooh, wow.
So they were the spoiler in that race.
Right.
But okay, going back to Parliament, so the United Kingdom. So again, they're elected, like their representatives to the House of Commons are elected based on a plurality vote. They won the plurality. They got a higher percentage than any other candidate running in for that seat.
Okay.
So then they go to Parliament, and who elects their prime minister in the United Kingdom?
Oh, it's the people in the parliament itself, right?
Yes.
Rather than
Yes.
see in our
Rather
country
than us.
we elect the
Yeah.
president and the Congress separately. In parliamentary systems, the parliament elects the prime minister.
Yes. Now, how is the electoral college based on numbers wise? What is that based on?
So I don't recall. Tell me.
It's based on the number of representatives we have in Congress.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
you following me now? Okay, so
All right.
so basically we have like 538 electoral college votes. That's
Okay.
based on I think 50 from all the Senate seats, or because it takes the House and the Senate.
It takes them both
And
combined.
and so basically that 538 is House members plus your senators.
Okay.
And now, if you think about the electoral college, again, like in the United Kingdom, you elect somebody to the Parliament, and they vote for the Prime Minister,
Okay.
removing our ability to directly impact their election for the highest elected official, the Prime
Right,
Minister.
right.
In the United States, the Electoral College says, well, no, we're not going to let you, my elected representative, and you, my senator, to vote for who our president's going to be.
Okay.
It's more direct democracy to have an Electoral College. And so a popular vote, and granted, not everybody in the Green Party agrees with this, the popular vote is you would find the few key cities or states would decide these elections, when really you do want to be able to have like Montana and Utah and Colorado,
Right.
or Oregon, to have some say in these elections. New Hampshire.
And I was
right?
wondering when you said that if part of the reason why you are maybe more pro-electoral college is because a Green Party might be a little bit more appealing to a rural voter, right?
Absolutely. So now here in Maine, New
Hampshire or Maine, both
yeah,
pretty rural.
okay. So New Hampshire has 4 electoral college votes based on 2 congressional seats, and you get 2 for your senators. So 4 electoral college votes. In Maine, we have 4 electoral colleges as well. Now, how Maine and Nebraska do it is we split the electoral college vote by congressional district. So, and you've probably seen this maybe in 2020 and in 2016, Donald Trump won the 2nd district of Maine, which is more rural.
Okay.
He got more votes than Clinton, in 2016 and more votes than Biden in 2020. So he got an electoral college vote. So that's one out of the three.
Okay.
Hillary Clinton won the first district, and she got more than Trump in the whole state.
Okay.
So she won the other three.
Okay.
So if Donald Trump had won the second district and then got more than Hillary in the whole state, then he would have won three electoral college. She would have won one.
Okay.
So we split it by congressional district, and if states did that all over the place, Al Gore probably would have won the election in 2000 because of Florida. And if you'd split up Florida by a congressional district, the electoral college votes, it would have been a different outcome.
There's a way of doing the electoral college that's different
Absolutely.
based on how you split up the district.
Electoral college reform, Nebraska does the same thing for their electoral college votes.
Okay.
So, but Maine, we have ranked choice voting and the electoral college, split up by congressional district. I think it's a far better system. And again, I'm not opposed to, a popular vote with ranked choice voting. Many of my colleagues in the Green Party, agree with, prefer that. But I think again, it'd be far better to have like a kind of electoral cost system that actually, better represents the winner take all for states. Electoral college votes is not good for democracy.
Right.
So.
And I should also say that when I first entered into politics, one of the issues that I was interested in was I didn't like that we still had a president, because it felt almost monarchical to have this single man with this much power. And because I didn't like that we had a president, I looked into what are alternatives to presidencies.
Interesting.
And I found parliamentarism is one, and then also dividing the executive into separate positions. So if you want to break up that central figurehead where all of politics is around one person's personality instead of the broader political conversation, two ways to do that are a system that more reflects parliamentarism and a system that divides the roles of the president across an executive council.
Yeah. So I think again the electoral college, it's a step further than a parliamentary system where the electeds elect their president, or the prime minister, But yeah, so that's kind of my thoughts on the electoral college. But getting back to
that's a very legitimate perspective. I
Yeah.
think reasonable people could disagree on the electoral college from that point of view.
Yeah, I think it's I think we sometimes get stuck in certain beliefs. Oh, the electoral college is bad, but when delegates that are so you have a number of different states, right? And the Democratic Party, it's a similar kind of way to the Green Party and other parties, where you get a certain number of delegates in each state for a presidential candidate.
Okay.
Okay, we're talking about winning a presidential nomination for a party now.
Okay.
And it's funny because I pointed out to some of my Green Party colleagues, I'm like, well, the way we have these delegates, and Nebraska has 5, and California has 20 or probably 35 or something like that. Maine has 10 because we have a lot of Green Party people in Maine. It's like that system of awarding delegates for presidential candidates is similar to the Electoral College.
Yes, it is. Right.
So
it's almost like maybe it pragmatically arose from the conditions, right?
Yeah. So it's
whenever you try to organize a party this way, you're going to end up with something like that.
I mean, I don't have like a poli-sci background, but I imagine you do have like those kind of things that like tend towards this kind of thing. Like you need to represent a lot of people's interests, and you need to kind of wait and make sure people do have a voice in Iowa, as well as Illinois and etc. But how do you do that kind of fairly? And so like there's formulas that figure out how many delegates each state gets and stuff. But yeah, it's a similar kind of process to the Electoral College, and I pointed this out, and they're like, "Oh, you kind of have a point." Anyways,
yeah. So
back to ballot access.
Yes.
Okay, so every state's different with ballot access, and again, we have right now Jill Stein is on enough ballots without New Hampshire, I think back in early July or June, she even had enough ballot access to win 270 electoral college votes, which means she is a viable candidate. So one of the things that people will say as a critique of the Green Party,
Mm-hmm.
Jill Stein is not viable. And the definition of viability is something that can happen.
Right, right.
And she can win enough electoral college votes to become president, therefore she is viable.
Yeah.
Is it likely? In our system, no, because we have a lot of money in our elections.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Right,
and but we do have. She has the ability to become president, and if we were to reach enough people
Mm-hmm.
that would otherwise stay at home.
And there's more historical precedent than I was taught about by most of the Democrats I knew for third-party candidates potentially winning. There are I forget what election it was, but there was, I believe, a presidential election where a third party at the time won.
Yes, I mean, so you know, that party is the Republican Party, is the most successful third party in U.S. history.
Yes.
Because prior to 1860, and it was a little bit before that, right? The Republican Party wasn't really a party, and the two big parties at that time were the Democratic Party and the Whig Party,
Mm.
and the Whig Party fell apart in 1848. They had a really bad election, and this could be that election for the Democrats now.
Yeah.
I thought 2016 maybe was going to be that election, but they've
If
managed
they
to
fall
stay
apart
alive.
hard enough, it is possible.
Yeah, and then the parties that kind of arose from that, you know, you had the coalition of parties that eventually led to the Republican Party, and really Abraham Lincoln and the Republican Party are the most successful third party kind of like candidate for president and party. So yeah, there is precedent for this kind of
So
thing happening.
it was Abraham Lincoln was the one who led that shift for a third party victory too.
Essentially, I mean, and it was a time of huge upheaval, right? We had the Civil War, and there were a lot of lines being drawn in the Whig Party and these other parties, you know, for the abolition or for maintaining slavery. And so it was a very dynamic time, a time of, you know, political transformation. I think it could happen again in the very near future here.
Yeah.
If the country can hold itself together.
Right.
I mean, we could completely rip apart too. I mean, the way things look right now.
I hope so.
You know, that's the thing. It's like, you know, there's
I'm
some
a
people.
secessionist, so
You're a secessionist.
I kind of hope that we rip apart.
You know, there's a lot of anarchistic people too. Like they're like, why bother voting for the Green Party? Well, if you want to strike a blow to the Democratic Party, vote for the Green Party. You know, join the Green Party. That strikes a blow to the Democrats.
Right.
Again,
right.
so Jill Stein, or in 2016, if Bernie Sanders had, in 2016, Jill Stein offered Bernie the nomination for the Green Party. Whether or not that could actually technically be done, she offered it to him. And if Bernie had been the Green Party candidate in 2016, he likely would have beaten both Clinton and Trump.
Yeah.
With, you know, getting
He
enough
had a lot
electoral
of
college
traction.
votes. He had tons of traction. And instead, if you look at the electoral map in 2016,
Mm-hmm.
you've got like maybe 20, like, and you included 3 candidates on the ballot, or you know, that, or in that election, Trump, Clinton, and did not vote.
Mm-hmm.
Trump would have gotten around 20 electoral college votes. 20.
Okay.
Clinton would have gotten about 40 electoral college votes.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like 400. I mean, I don't have the numbers exactly right. 470 would have gone to did not vote.
Yeah.
200 more than is what is needed to win the presidency. So, I mean, it's, again, Jill Stein is viable because she can get the 270 needed to win.
Right.
And there are enough people that would stay home maybe. If they learn about Jill Stein, they might come out and vote, especially if they feel strongly about what's going on in Palestine or the wars that are going on, or hey, new solutions to fixing the economy,
Right.
wanting Medicare for all,
Right.
you know, free college.
Which is even Medicare for all is even a word that's been sort of diluted by the Democratic Party. I feel like
Also,
because
you
every
know,
Democrat realized they had to say the words Medicare for all in order to get people to vote for them. But then they started being like, well, for me, Medicare for all means.
Yeah, and you know, as we were saying earlier, you know, it's the Green Party has influenced the political dynamics. Now we talk about Medicare for all as a thing,
Right.
right? But prior to so Bernie ran on in 2016, but I think the Green Party had also been running on that. I think Nader like kind of introduced that some of those ideas back in
Yeah.
2000.
Yeah.
So they're not new ideas necessarily, and it's like, but the Democratic Party has taken these things because they do resonate with the people, and they don't tend to really do anything with them. They have a watered down Green New Deal, not a demilitarized Green New Deal that the Green Party has.
Right.
So, anyways,
Yeah,
so back to ballot access. Okay.
Yes.
Maine, we're on the ballot. Again, I helped in Arizona, I helped in Connecticut, New York, New Hampshire. I've gotten some information that we are likely to be on the ballot here. That we did manage to get the signatures
Okay.
to get on the ballot here in New Hampshire. So Jill Stein will be a choice. I can't remember in 2016 if she was on the ballot here. You can refresh my memory if she was or not. In 2020, we did not have ballot access because we.
I wasn't. I'm 25. I wasn't politically active in 2016.
Okay. So she was either on the ballot or ran as a write-in candidate in 2016. I want to say she was a write-in candidate in 2016.
Okay.
So here she'll be she's we still have a little bit more work to do, but it's likely she will be on the ballot here in New Hampshire, which is great news. Very exciting.
Absolutely.
And allowing people to have a choice.
Yeah.
That is maybe more in line with their values than the Democrats, the Republicans, that also maybe more in line than with RFK Jr. I don't know Cornel West, if he's going to be on the ballot. I kind of doubt it.
Yeah. Well, what did he end up even running with? Was it the People's Party? He changed parties a couple times.
Well,
right?
he was so that's a whole story too. All right, that could take a whole other episode. But he started off with the People's Party, then he went to the Green Party. And actually, when I petitioned in Arizona, it was for Cornel West.
Okay.
Because at that time, Jill Stein was helping Cornel West transition to the Green Party. Cornel was being led in other directions by people in the campaign, and he listened to them and decided to go independent. But then he was like, oh, but I got to start at these parties in certain states so I can get ballot access. And it's like, well, you could have had ballot access in California without having to start a new party.
Okay. Yeah.
It's he was steered in a very bad direction, and I saw some of that stuff happening from my connections with people involved in the campaigns. But we got Arizona on the ballot because of Cornel West in the petitioning I helped out with there in Arizona. And so New Hampshire, we're likely to be on the ballot, which is a great thing. It's unfortunate though, because right now Jill's only going to be on the ballot herself as essentially an independent here in New Hampshire.
Okay.
There's different requirements for the number of signatures you need to do to be a formalized party. And really, if it would have been fantastic if we'd gotten enough signatures to actually be a formal party here in New Hampshire, which I would love to see happen, but it's going to take a lot more work. And I'm hoping if people are inspired by this conversation at all, to reach out to myself. Maybe you can put some contact information for me.
Absolutely.
With this.
Yeah.
People have a way of reaching me to discuss about starting a Green Party in New Hampshire, because it's. I've thought about moving here to New Hampshire to help make it happen if needed.
You know, it's funny. You are, I think, the fourth person to approach me from these organizations I'm talking to. Well, a lot of them asked me personally if I wanted to start a chapter, and I'm like, well, I don't know if I want to start 4 third parties. You know what I mean?
True.
Maybe I'll pick one.
Yeah. And your talk about, so I don't know if you've heard, viewers, talk about doing a panel with all the different parties, myself and others. I'd love to be a part of that. Because we really, it's not just about running Jill Stein for president. We want to run people for Congress. So, we'd love to challenge, your senators and your congressional reps here in New Hampshire, because I don't know what you think of your current House reps and your senators, but in general, they're not representing the will of the people. They're representing the interests of corporations, because that's who funds them.
Absolutely.
It one of the key things about the Green Party that separates it from the Libertarian Party and all these other independents, RFK Jr. We do not accept money from corporate contributions or from super PACs.
Yeah.
So it really sets us apart. In terms of like political action committees and PACs, we like some candidates will kind of accept some money if it's a people-funded PAC, right? So there's a little bit of a delineation there.
For clarification, just means small donations from a larger number of the actual general population, rather than a small number of large donations from rich people and corporations.
Yeah, exactly. So, again, we would like to challenge all those races, and because again, in some of these races, you're not going to have a voice saying we need to stop the wars that are bankrupting us, our country. Again, bankrupting our country, right, with MMT. Yeah. But it's still, it's prioritization of spending. Why aren't we prioritizing spending on ending homelessness, education from pre-K to college? Yeah. Another thing that's a big winner on Jill's platform and in the Green Party platform is free childcare. Yeah. So I think it's important, in the end of the day, people should do the research on these other parties, these other candidates, be a little bit more involved. And, there are, people that say, hey, electoralism isn't going to help us. But if we do have somebody running for office on, say, a public bank,
right,
and we run a ballot initiative on a public bank, and we get a community say, hey, we really want, you're either we're going to get the ballot initiative passed for a public bank, or we've got Dominic who's running on it and going to help steer, so we could do that for all those things.
Call it the movement candidate.
Exactly.
You run to get the ideas out there and to create that pressure.
And grassroots democracy is about coming together to support these things, these candidates that are running on the policies that we want and the policies we want through direct kind of ballot initiatives. There's a lot of work that we need to do. To be honest, to be fair, this election we're going to be screwed again, right? It's going to be most likely Trump,
right?
But even if it is Harris and Waltz, we're still going to be screwed.
I'm glad that you have that realistic perspective, because I also think it's most likely Trump, and that's not because I just think it's what's probably going to happen.
Yeah.
It's not a fatalism towards trying to stop it. It's just I think that's going to happen.
I mean, will Kamala end up going into a debate with Trump or with anybody else? Right. I found it really appalling that these people are saying, "Oh, I'm going to run for president." Biden had a debate, and of course that's what led to Biden having to step out. Right. I mean, if they had a Harris-Trump debate, and Harris bombs that, I mean, they'd have to find somebody else, right? So, I mean,
we'd have to find a third presidential candidate.
And it's kind of a farce too, because they almost treat this as if it's a presidential primary. In some ways, these debates, and they didn't have any debates for the Democratic Party primary, right? They didn't even have a Democratic Party primary, really.
Yeah. I mean, here in New Hampshire, Joe Biden wasn't even on the ballot, and then
that's right.
It was demanded by everyone in the Democratic Party in our state that we write him in, even though he refused to be on our ballot.
Did you write him in?
I did not write him in. No, I did not write him in. Not in the primary, for sure.
And then you had Democrats for Nikki Haley, right? That was a big thing as well. That was an interesting thing.
Yes.
It's just a farce. And, the fact that, Jill Steins asked to debate Bobby Kennedy Jr., right? Who's this independent darling, and people think that he's not part of the two-party system, and he kind of is.
I never heard anybody call him Bobby before.
Yeah, not a fan of Bobby. But anyways, he has refused to debate Jill, even though it was the free and equal debates that offered to Jill, to the Libertarian Party candidate, Chase Oliver, who's their nominee now.
Right.
Trump and Biden were you know, it was offered to all and Bobby, um, but yeah, he refuses to debate even Jill Stein, but he complains about not, you know, Biden and Trump not allowing him to debate. It's like, well, you won't debate Jill, so you're asking for a debate there, and they won't give it to you, and you're being all pouty,
Yeah, well,
Bobby.
what he
And
wants to do is sit in front of a camera alone and debate hypothetical people who aren't in the room.
yeah, it would be interesting to see Bobby in a debate. I mean, he might do fairly well, but I still think Jill Stein would beat him in a debate, and I think Jill would mop the floor with Kamala Harris and Trump.
Yeah.
You know, and if it should be as simple as, is the candidate capable of winning 270 electoral college votes? In which case Jill Stein is.
Right,
in which
right.
case Kennedy is. Cornel West is not. Right, so he wouldn't be there.
And is Chase Oliver there as
Chase
well?
Oliver is.
All right.
So the Libertarian Party, they, you know, I mentioned earlier, the Green Party kind of has a base of around 15 to 20 states that we have easy ballot access in.
Yeah.
The Libertarian Party has easy ballot access in about 30 to 35 states. Yeah. Not all 50, like
right.
some people say, but they can usually get to 50 easier than the Green Party because they have a bigger base to start with.
Yeah.
And the Democrats and Republicans even start off with not 50.
Yeah.
Right? They have to go through certain processes to also have their ballot access for their candidates.
Okay.
But they're almost always guaranteed, of course, and you know they hardly have to fight in certain states. You know, I mean it's not much of a fight in the certain states where they're not on the ballot automatically. They, you know, but there's still a process there. But
so
yeah,
we are reaching a point where we have been talking for about an hour, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So I want to know if there's anything else, any final thoughts you want to have before the end of this podcast.
I'm amazed how much we covered in an hour and 15 minutes.
We did. We just covered a lot.
A lot. There may be questions out there from people. So, you know, if people, you know, respond and they have questions, I'd like to answer those questions.
Absolutely.
If people are interested in talking more about, again, a Green Party here in New Hampshire, which I think is desperately needed.
And I would gladly help out if I can get another group of people who are interested in starting a Green Party in New Hampshire. I'd gladly be one of them.
Yeah. Oh, great. I mean, and let's, you know, talk more about the panel. I'll come down. You know, it's not super easy for me to get from Maine down here, but I'm glad to support it because I think it's an important discussion to have, and be glad to meet others. You know, talking about, you know, really, you know, the two-party system is not good for us.
Right.
And it really stifles democracy. So much of the Democrats, you know, what they're running on is saving democracy.
Yeah.
But I think it's clear to most people with a brain that can think, can see through that statement that they are for democracy when they're not into having their own primary process for a nomination. They fight to keep the Green Party off the ballot. They're suing us in certain states to try to keep us off the ballot, right?
Yeah.
So that could happen here in New Hampshire still, right? Even though we might have the signatures to get on the ballot. I mean, so many. The Democratic Party is definitely not democratic. But you know, yeah, I think we have covered a ton of stuff. I really appreciate it, Dominic, and perhaps, you know, we can touch on other things with the Green Party during the roundtable, the panel discussion, and yeah, please, if you want to follow me on X, it's justinb.mainegreens 1, and or Justin B. Green. You can probably find me, and you know, I talk a lot about the Green Party, what is going on with Jill Stein. I am very pro-Palestine as well, and talking also about our other congressional candidates that don't get enough attention. And really, again, we run candidates in as many states as possible in every election cycle for every level of office.
Right. Yeah, because I mean that is also one of the goals. There's a reason I call this Liquid New Hampshire, and I set the goal as being so locally focused. Is because the national news is focused on a small handful of national issues, and those aren't always the most important issues that most Americans should be talking about and thinking about.
And if we had a Green Party in New Hampshire, we would love to run candidates in all those kind of local elections, for school board, for city council. In Maine, just one last thought here.
Yeah, absolutely.
In Maine, we have probably over 100 elected Greens for municipal offices in Maine.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of Greens that are registered, and sometimes somebody runs for school board in Greenville, and we don't even know about them.
Yeah.
But they're elected, and
Yeah.
it's like, it's cool. It's so we would love to do the same thing here to give people a different choice from Democrat, Republican, red, blue, that aren't really representing you, you know. So that would be one of my greatest wishes, is to get something off the ground here, to give people a choice, besides the people that are running the country into the ground.
Absolutely. That's a good note to end it on.
Dominic, thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on.